Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we're going to Masechtas Rosh Hashana Daf Tes Vav. We are going to begin on Tes Vav Amud Aleph, about 10 lines from the top. Bomine Rav Yochanan Rav Yanai. So we're asking the question regarding an esrog. We were discussing the dinim regarding the meiser. Do we go basal akita, the time it's plucked, basal chanata, the time that it buds. So esrog Rosh Hashana Shalei Mosai. When is the Rosh Hashana, this cutoff point for the esrog? So Amalei Shvat says it's in the month of Shvat. So Shvat the Chadashim or Shvat the Tekufa? Is it the Shvat for months or the Shvat for Tekufa? Which we'll see in Rashi what that means. Amalei the Chadashim, it's months. So it says Rashi Shvat the Chadashim Shulavana. Do we go after the moon? The Shvat the Tekufa the Cham, do we go after the sun? Masoif Shloshim Shel Tekufas Teves Nichtasu Shvat Shulchama. That when it comes to 30 days after the Tekufa of Teves, then all of a sudden the month of Shvat enters. So the answer is that we go after the Chadashim, which is the Levana, the moon. Tosa says the Apal Gav Bishul Haperes Chachachama, that when it comes to the ripening of fruits, we go after the sun, as the pasuk says, Mimeg Tvuos Shemesh. The truth is, Hachanamik Mimeged Gerish Yirachim mentions the moon. Vegam Yisrael Moinin Levana. We know that the Jewish people, we go after the moon. Bo Mine Rabbim Rav Nachman Yirmelu Rav Yochanan Rav Yanai Hoisa Shan Muberes Mahu. What is the din regarding a tree? An Elon, if we have a Shan Muberes, a leap year. So Malay Halach Achar Rov Shanim. So the din is we go after the majority of years. Look at Rashi. Imasa Rosh Hashana. Shvat Samach Teves or other Rishon Shehu B'Makom Shvat. The question is, what happens when you have this 13th month? Is the Rosh Hashana the one which is next to Teves, which is the one right before? You have Teves and then you have Shvat, or do we say other Rishon Shehu B'Makom Shvat? Or maybe we say other Rishon, which is now in the place of Shvat because you had a leap year, so therefore other Rishon because you added an extra month. Now that really was Shvat. So my answer is we go after Rov Shanim, and therefore Misha Shomo Shvat. The fact that it's called Shvat, that's what it is. Omer Rabba Esrog Bashishis Shenichnasul Shvius. What is the din if you have an esrog that's on the 6th year going into the 7th year? And we know that what that means is the Chanata, the budding took place in the 6th year, but the Lakita, the actual harvesting or the plucking, was only in the 7th year. So the din is Batur Min HaMeiser. Because we go basa lakita, since we go after the time in which it's plucked, so therefore l'chayra, then therefore that's the reason why it's putter from meiser, because it's the 7th year. However, patur min a beer. Strangely enough, it says it's putter from beer. Of course, all this is going to be explained because if it's putter from beer is something which is done on if it's the 7th year. So l'chayra, you would think that it should be chayv in beer. If we have the 7th year going into the 8th year, so Patura b'meiser. So in this case, we're saying it's Pater from meiser because we go basar chanata, and therefore it blossomed, sprouted on the 7th year. So therefore, you don't have to give meiser. But chayav is babir, which chayav is babir. This makes more sense because again, it has the kedusha of shvius. Okay, I'm way by. Now, Bishlam is Seifa L'chomer. I can understand the Seifa. It makes sense. He's going strict. He's saying that you're chayv in biur. El Reisha Baturman a biur. Why does it say you don't have to destroy it? Amai Gamrin and Zilbasa Chanata. Why? Is it because we say we go basa Chanata? So if that's the case, that's the reason why. In the case of Shisha Shnichnas L'Shvius, that's the reason why it's pater from biur because it blossomed in the 6th year, so therefore in the 7th year it doesn't have the kedusha of shvius, therefore it's pater from the chiyuv of biur. So yihachi t'schai b'meiser. So it should be the other way around. It shouldn't be pater from meiser. If in fact we're saying that it has the din of the 6th year, then you should be mechuyev to take off meisers, meiser risha and meiser ani. Termalei yada koil v'mashmishin bav yad avet t'schai b'meiser. Everyone's touching it. And all of a sudden you're going to tell me that you're chayiv in meiser, says Rashi. And he delo mechayiv lafgura delo nahagaba shvius. I can understand that we're not noyig in the dinim of shvius Miu kol sodas pardesos, all the fields and vineyards, hefgerhein b'shvius. Ve'ein esrog zeh nishmar bo levado. It's not being guarded. V'al karacho hakom mashmishmoy was touching it. V'hefger patim in a meiser. So the reason is, it's true. It really has the din of the 6th year because we go basar chanata. So therefore, if we go basar chanata, shishis nichlas l'shvius, that's the reason why it's pater from beer. However, the question is, so why is it pater from meiser? Is because it's hefker. Meiser is hefker, and therefore something which is ownerless, you don't take off meiser. Rav Hamnuna oimer bashishis nichlas l'shvius. If it's a 6th year going to the 7th, well, olam shishis. It always has the din of shishis. Therefore, according to him, that means that not only does he agree, he at least agrees that it's pater from beer, but he's chayv and meiser. Uba shvius nichlas l'shminis olam shvius. However, when it comes to shvius, entering the shminis, it's always shvius, because again, he holds you simply go basar chanata, and therefore he doesn't disagree with anything except for whether one is obligated in meiser, which he says you are obligated shishish nichlas l'shvius because it's basar chanata, and the actual chanata, the budding, took place in the 6th year. So Mesa Rav Shimon Yehuda Aimer. He said Mishum Rav Shimon and then Rav Shimon Esrog Bashish and Nichlas l'shvius. When you have this case, it says patur min a meiser. It says that you're not chayv in meiser. It says you're pater, like we said in the first case. Patur min a beer. Shein loch davar shechayv b'meiser. There's nothing that can be chayv in meiser. Elam came gadol b'chiyav, unless it grew with a chiyav, v'nilkat b'chiyav, and it was also harvested b'chiyav. And therefore, for that reason, uba shvius shminis, even though you go basar chanata, so chayra, in that case, it's clear you'd be patur min a meiser, but also it's patur min a beer, which is a tremendous chiddush. He holds your patur in all cases, from meiser and beer, 6 going to 7, 7 going to 8, for the same logic. Shein loch davar shechai b'beer, elam king gadol b'shvius, v'nilka b'shvius. It has to be that both took place. So if that's the case, Rash's kasha Rav Hamnuna, sefer kasha bein l'Rabba bein Rav Hamnuna. So according to the Resha, it's a kasha. Here he says it's patur in a meiser. Rav Hamnuna says you're chayv in meiser when it comes to 6 going to the 7th year. When we 7th year going to the 8th year, he says you're patur from beer. Everyone holds you're chayv in beer because it has the din of shmita. So Tanaihi, the answer is that it's a machlokas Tanaim. That in other words, there are people that will say shishis nichnas l'shvius, shvius nichnas l'shminis. If there are opinions that say you're patur from meiser and from beer. The Sanya. Rav Yosi of Tulmas Hayed that he testified Mishum Chamisha Zakanim in front of 5 Zakanim in the following statement. Esrog Achali Kitasai. When it comes to an Esrog, we go after the time that's picked. Well, meiser. When it comes to the dinim of meiser. So according to that opinion, if you would have, for example, Shvius Shenichnas L'Shminis, so Lakita is only taking place on the 8th year. So we go bas Lakita, and it would be chayv and meiser. However, if it would be Shishish Nichnas L'Shminis, since the Lakita is taking place on the 7th year, so then you would be pater from meiser. The din is, when it comes to meiser and shvius, namely the dinim of beer, is the same. There's we go basal lakita. So shvius, man Dr. Shmei. What do you mean shvius? We weren't even talking about that. So as we continue to test Vavam and Bays, there was words missing, and this is how you're supposed to read it. Esrog achlakitas meiser. When it comes to an esrog, we go after the plucking only when it comes to the separation of meisers. However, achlachanat l'shvius, we go after the budding at the top when it comes to the dinim of shvius. However, Rabbi Seinu nimna be'usha achlakitas ben meiser ben l'shvius. So we have a machlokus also when it comes to shvius. Do we go basar lakita, basar chanat when it comes to an esrog? Itmar. Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish Armi Tavayu esrog bashishish nisal l'shvius. When it comes to an esrog, 6 you're going to the 7th. Will olam shishis, because again we go basar chanata, and therefore the chanata took place in the 6th year, which means that it'll be chayv and meiser, but it's pater from beer. Kiyasa Rabbi Yochanan esrog bashishish nisal l'shvius. When it comes to this case, nafil kazayas, even a kazayas, the natzis kikar, and it grew in the 7th year. Chayav lehem yishum tevel. Then there is a chiyuv of tevel, which means that it's still a chiyuv of meiser. It doesn't matter, even though it was a small amount, but since it was in the 6th year, it grew at least up to kazayas, so now even if it's the 7th year, the din is that one is chayiv to take off meisos. Question 10. What inyan ma pligi tanoi be'esrog I azlinan boy basar lakita or basar chanata? And the answer is by meiser and by shvius. Tanurvan. Ilan shechantu peroisav koidem tu b'shvat. Let's say you have fruit from a tree that blossomed before Tu B'Shvat. So Misaser Lashana Sha'abra. So Tu B'Shvat is the cutoff point, and therefore everything before that, if it blossomed before, you go Basa Chanata by an Ilan, so then we go from the year before. Because again, we're now to commingle new and old when it comes to the separations. Achar Tu B'Shvat, let's say it budded after Tu B'Shvat, Misaser Lashana Ba. It goes after the following year. When do we say this? Only when we have a tree in which it has two times, or it's picked at two separate times, bashan in the year. So shtei brechos sachadaitach, el ema kein shtei brechos. In other words, again, what does it happens? It doesn't all take place at the same time. That's when we say that we're going to be going basa chanata. However, aval ilan ha'isa brecha achas. Let's say you have a tree in which it's picked only one time. For example, it could go into kolim, the zaysim, day palm trees, and olives, the charuvim and carob. Afal pi shechantu peiroseim koidim tu b'shvat. Even though the chanata took place before, nisas l'shana haba. We say the meiser goes l'shana haba. So this is a case that we will also say by a tree that will go basal akita, which is question 11, that asks be'eza ilan iko madir bedazin bo basal akita lavar esrog. So in addition to the esrog, if it grows bevricha achas, if it happens in one shot, then the din is that you pluck it all and harvest at one time, so then it go basal akita. Rabbi Yochanan nahago becharuvim krem nechemia. In fact, we follow the shita of Reb Nechemia when which is this whole point of Bevrech Achas when it comes to Charuvim, which means that we go basal lakita when it comes to carob. So again, there's something unusual about the carob. Again, it's interesting. We eat carob on Tu B'Shvat, and we see now there's the Gemara specifically talking about Charuvim connected to Tu B'Shvat. Eisrei Shalach Rabbi Yochanan. B'nai shuach, when it comes to these figs, shvius sholhen shnia. The shvius of them is in the second year. Because they're for 3 years. So why is that a question? Since these figs are picked once a year, so the question is we should go basal akita. So since it's picked in the second year, it shouldn't have kedusha shvius. So again, because it's being plucked, it shouldn't have the din of kedusha shvius. So ishtik on that the Gemara asks a question. Let's look at Rashi. Shvius sholhen shnia. Shvius sholhen nohegas b'shana shnia. That their shvius falls out and occurs by their second year shel shmita of the shmita cycle. And they shel shanim, says Rashi, peros hachaintim ba b'shvius, the fruit that blossomed on the 7th year, ein nigmorin, they don't get finished ad shana shnia shel shmita until the second year of the shmita cycle. Therefore, again, it's 7-1-2, which is the 3rd year. V'anan basar chanata azlinan, we go basar chanata v'nohagu bahu shvius. Therefore, it has a din of shvius. The question is, it sounds clear that we go basar chanata, not basar lakita, when it comes to these things. So ishtik, because l'chayr it's since it's plucked once a year, we shouldn't say that we go basar chanata. It shouldn't have the kedusha of shvius. Okay. Omrule Rav Abel Hakoyin Rav Yosef Hakoyin Amai Ishtik. Why were you silent? Why couldn't you come up with a pshat? Namely, why don't you say Aminulacha no Rav Nechemia V'ad Amrli Rabbanon? You're saying I hold Rav Nechem and you're mentioning Rabbanon. Why don't you just say that's a machlokus? Not everyone holds like him. Mishum di Amrle Shavka Rabbanon V'ad Rav Nechemia. Because you said you're departing from, you could say, why are you deviating from the shita of the Rabban, which seems to be the shita you should be following, and you're going at the shita of Nechemia, v'leima ba'kaminalach nahagu. You should say nahagu v'ad amrit li isura. You're giving the impression that there's an element of asur, says Rashi, the asur l'mezvahu basal akita, that it's asur to go after the time it's actually harvested. Anan nami moedina the asur El nehagukach. This is how they're noying. Yarmalei makam isura ki nagu shavkinon. So he said, the makam isura, in a place where it's usher, let them in fact just leave it. So on this, so Amrulay, V'leimulay ki aminu lachana ma'isa charuvin d'rabanan v'yada amrit li shvius d'raisa. So you could have said it that way. That when we're talking about charuvim, it's a din d'rabanan. You're asking me a question about shvius d'raisa. So El Omer Rabbi Abba Hakoyin Tamini im hashiva reish lakish l'tshuvazu im hashiva ha'oisva. So if I would have answered, he would ask it. El ema ikibul Rabbi Yochanan imlo kibul. The question is, was he makabel or not? Says Rashi, behind ishtik. The reason why he was quiet to this question regarding these figs is mishum delo yadol hashiv, is that he didn't know how to answer the question. Imlo kibul behind the ishtik mishum delo ifchaslei delo dami ma'aser peres elon derabanan achmuri be kashvius deraisa. It doesn't mean that he doesn't agree, that he necessarily is retracting. The question is exactly what did he mean by that element of silence. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's see question TA29. Maishna charuvim l'Rav Nechemia de'azlinin l'hu basar l'kita mishar peros de'azlinin l'hu basar chanata. So he said when it comes to charuvim and other fruits, because they're also bericha achas, since they're all done in one shot, that's hainu l'kitasan ke'echad, they're all gathered at one time. So therefore, when it comes to that, we go basar l'kita, even by an elon. Otherwise, we would go basar chanata. Ad kan.